Hi, I'm totally not named Dan, but you can call me that if you want. And today I'm here again with my buddy, Linosek.
Yes.
Yep, and you know what that means. That means we're back for some more UniVersus content, some more of My Hero Academia CCG. But today specifically, we've got a rulebook to look through. So let's hop on over to that. Here we go. The new How to Play guide for the My Hero Academia collectible card game is out in PDF format. I'll leave a link to that down in the description. And we're just going to have a look through it, see what's changed, see what hasn't, see how much of a good beginner guide it is. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, let's go.
Before we begin, though, I'd like to point out I am a qualified judge for this game. I'm not necessarily the best judge, but I am a white belt. Are you a judge, Linosek?
No.
Why not? Why didn't you take the test while you had the chance? It was easy.
Because that requires slightly more effort than I'm willing to put in.
Anyone could have been a judge.
I know.
It's not like I did much for it.
Does it literally have any idea how the game works?
I mean, pretty much. To be fair, that is a tall ask for new players, so hopefully this booklet does some good for that.
We'll see.
Indeed we shall. So let's scroll on down to the contents page. Here we go. So what we have is win conditions, game zones / setup, card types, characters, foundations, attacks, actions and assets. So that already tells you what all the card types are in the contents page.
I mean,
turn sequence.
that's good.
And then we got all the sections of the turn sequence, the start phase, the combat phase, the end phase. Yes, we only have 3 phases.
Yeah. Because,
Nice
you know,
and
imagine
simple
having...
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Imagine
a nice
having
simple
more than
game
3
in that
phases.
regard. But, I mean, not in most of the others. Playing cards continued, because we need to know a lot
Ooh.
about playing cards.
And not just put it into one section.
Enhanced step, abilities enhances. Interesting that we have abilities enhances separate from the enhanced step.
From the enhanced step.
Abilities responses, block step continued, because I know that's where a lot of the new players struggle. Momentum, advanced lessons, FAQ, and a quick reference guide at the end. Basically a glossary. But they didn't want to say glossary, because I guess people don't know what the word glossary means nowadays.
Very quick references are usually like little sheets you can just like put by the table or something and have a general idea of how to play.
I mean, it's basically the same thing, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what we got here? My Hero Academia collectible card game is a fighting card game where you play as any of your favorite characters from the hit anime. Okay, so any of our favorite characters, you say?
Well, if they don't include every single character now, we get to sue them for false advertising.
Exactly. I'm really looking forward to playing as Melissa and Bakugo's mum and that one guy who looks like Natsu that cheers on Endeavor in season 4.
Oh, best girl Mina.
Mina will probably be in this.
Good.
Or do you mean Toru?
No.
Because Toru is also in set 1, just so you know.
Just don't sell a character card.
You know what would be hilarious? If they just revealed everybody else but didn't bother to spoiler any of Toru's kit before release.
That would be amazing.
That would be next level.
She just has no abilities.
No. She has abilities. You just don't get to see what they are.
But I just want to imagine she's like a freaking 20 health 8-hander with no abilities.
You know, people would play that. People would love just 8-hand size the character.
I know.
Oh, yeah, I just looked it up, and it turns out Jiffany Jamba is exactly that. She's an 820 with the infinity symbol. And she got banned for being too good.
Yeah, to be fair, infinity symbol on a character is kind of bonkers.
Infinity symbol, in most cases, just means you can play this with any symbol.
Yeah, that's what I mean on a character.
That's going to be heavily, heavily hindered by the new My Hero Academia rules that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, true.
Probably not in this rulebook, actually, because this rulebook doesn't cover deck building.
Fair enough.
But, you know, outside of things like Spirit Shotgun, where it cares about how many symbols cards share with your character, the infinity symbol is not that broken.
Still, having, like, almost no limits to your deck building could...
Well, you're still going to have to stick to one symbol.
True.
Moving on, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I joked about wanting to play as Bakugo's mom, but I actually really do want to see that happen for reasons that I'll talk about in the next video.
Oh boy.
So, a match in the MHA CCG is best 2 out of 3 games. Yep, so just defining what a match is. Each player has a character card and a deck of at least 50 cards. Interesting that it's at least.
At least 50.
Yep, you can play more than 50, and if it's anything like standard UniVersus, you can actually just rock up with your entire 3,000 card collection and just dump them on the table if you want.
Has someone actually done that before?
Yes. Yes, there was, I mean, back in really old school stuff, in like 2008 or something, there was a character who had a 3-hand size and could just draw whatever he wanted from his deck. So you just have every card in standard and just say, well, this card counters you, so I'll draw that this turn.
What the what?
Yeah, that character was not fair and did not last very long.
Hey, good.
They don't print that kind of thing anymore, but, you know, there were times when playing 3,000 cards was actually viable.
Yes, you have a free tutor whenever you want.
You have 3 cards worth of free tutor whenever you want. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it wasn't.
Uh,
But yeah, that was under a different company years ago, before Jasco got hold of the game. They tend to make fairer cards now than that. So at least 50 cards. Decks contain attacks that players will use to reduce their rival's health to 0. Yes, they do, but that is not the main content of the deck. Also, if a player ever runs out of cards in their deck and has no cards left after cycling, they instantly lose the game. That's interesting, because previously that was written as if they are unable to remove cards when cycling, but at the same time, the end result is the same, the wording doesn't really matter. Finally, some cards may provide special win conditions, allowing players to win in a unique way. I know you love that.
I love alternate win cons.
Yeah, and the fact that they're mentioning it in the player handbook here heavily implies that the My Hero Academia cards will include some.
Yes.
So I haven't seen any in the spoilers just yet. So next up we have Game Zones / Setup. Each player has their own play area in the game consisting of multiple game zones. The diagram on this page explains each of the game zones. Right, so I'm going to leave a link in my description to how I set up, because I set up a little differently to this. But, I mean, this is a perfectly reasonable way to set up your game area, right?
Yeah, it follows like a similar, like, general trend.
The one thing I don't like about this, and this is just my pickiness having played a whole load of different card games, is that this area is green and this area is red. Because in Magic the Gathering and any other card game that takes terminology from it, where your attacking creatures go is into the red zone. So it would be very nice to have red up here where the attacks are.
Yeah, I'm never going to be able to unsee that now.
That's the one thing that bothers me about this map, but I mean...
Well, now it's going to bother me too.
I've got my own Ochako card mat anyway, so... What's it matter? Right. Players put their characters and decks in the appropriate game zones, randomly determine who will go first. Interesting that we don't have a rule on how to do that, because a lot of games like to say you must play rock, paper, scissors, or you must roll dice, or you must toss a coin, and there's no good reason for doing so.
I just want to think of like the most obnoxious random determination process possible.
You must shuffle your deck, cut it to a specific card, show the opponent, and if your card is higher, throw them off Tokyo Tower.
Into
Man,
a
I
volcano.
love Season 0 Yu-Gi-Oh!
Oh yeah. Look, the Queen of Spades.
The first player commits their character, so you don't get your character ready going first. You don't get their abilities on your first turn if you're the first player. That's your one disadvantage, really. That and both players draw up to their hand size, right? Both players may mulligan. To mulligan, choose any number of cards in your hand and put them on the bottom of your deck. Then draw up to your hand size and shuffle your deck. Each player may only mulligan once at the start of a game. So what we have here is what was previously known as the Turbo Mulligan, where rather than mulliganing your entire hand, you can mulligan as much or as little of it as you want.
I personally really like that, because it allows me to be a lot sloppier with my deck building without being punished as hard.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I wanted to run in practice was a 30 attack version of Todoroki, and yeah, okay, having 30 attacks in there makes your checks bad, and so it's not a great deck. It fails to being unable to block, but you can still draw a good sort of 5-6 foundations in your opening hand if you draw a few in your first hand, and then you put back all the attacks, and then you draw a bunch more.
So you at least get a decent build turn off.
Yeah. So you can build a terrible deck and still build just fine.
Which is going to lead to a lot of people falling apart at tournaments.
It opens things up to a lot more interesting deck construction, not necessarily positively, but also not necessarily as badly as my Todoroki was done, so... It has
Just
potential,
run like
and I like it.
spam really low difficulty attacks.
Yeah, then we begin the first player's turn. The first player skips their first start phase, and therefore everything in it, and also they're not allowed to play attacks on their first turn. Now, something very interesting I note here, almost never going to matter, but only the first player is banned from playing attacks on their first turn. So the second player can play attacks during the first player's first turn. Not just on the second player's first turn, but actually on the first player's first turn. The second player can play attacks. There is one specific card called Jagged Barrage, which I'll put on screen here, that does that. And I just love the idea of I can attack you before my turn and you can do nothing about it.
Then they pull out a 0 block and you just cry.
Oh, quite possibly. But yeah, the rules update here is that while player 1 isn't allowed to play attacks on their first turn, player 2 definitely is, which is a lot better than what I thought the My Hero Academia rules were going to be. It gives player 2 a little bit more of an advantage. If player 1 overextends in playing out foundations, player 2 can then backswing them. But realistically, player 2 isn't going to do enough damage to have a massive impact because player 2 doesn't have any foundations yet to do anything with.
It is still dependent on the character, though.
Yes, because there are some crazy characters like All Might version 3 that just want to go in and hit.
Yeah, and also Tsuyu.
Tsuyu wants to have a whole load of foundations before she goes in and hit.
But she'll still be able to get like a good 1 or 2 hits in if she checks okay.
But I've been looking at Kirishima, and Kirishima looks like he can just play attacks and use the attacks to build, and then use what he's built to play more attacks, so... Kirishima might be a goes in on turn 2 and just keeps going kind of guy.
Which is a very Kirishima thing to do.
Sorry, on his first turn going second.
That's a very Kirishima thing to do.
Anyway, there are 3 types of cards in these rival decks. Yep, the rival decks that we'll be looking at in the next video contain characters, attacks, and foundations. What they all have in common is difficulty, which is top left, how difficult it is to play the card. You'll see character cards are some of the most difficult things in the game, but also most of the time you won't be playing them because you start with 1 in play. Then you've got your card name here, your block modifier, which is a number and then a plus, and where the plus is shows you what zone it is. Also, the color shows you what zone it is. We'll talk more about block zones later. We got card type down here, but this card type icon, nice as it is somewhat irrelevant because every card also has its own color. You can see characters are purple, attacks are orange, foundations are gray. And that, in my opinion, is the easiest way to tell them apart.
I mean, it's probably just for aesthetics.
It is nice to have the icon there, though, just to confirm if needed.
Yeah.
Then we got the text box where all the abilities happen, the resource symbols, which tell you what decks you can play these cards in, because you'll see each character only has 3 symbols. You can only play, well, a quarter of all cards in each character, more or less. Actually, probably more than that, because each card also has 3 symbols.
Yeah, I'm not running through the math on that.
And then you've got this thing here, which is now apparently known as the check. It used to be referred to as the control, but it's what you use when you make a check to see if you can play a card.
People were really calling them checks a lot of the time, so...
Yeah. I find it weird to have this is the check, but it's also the number when you make a check. But when you make a check, if it's got any bonuses, the check of the card and the check of your check are 2 different checks.
Oh, that's going to be fiddly.
So linguistically, I don't really like conflating the 2, but what can you do?
We'll see.
Ah, and here we have that All Might I was talking about.
All Might, though.
You'll also see some other new cards as we go through the rulebook later on, but we won't be talking about them in detail here because that's going to be saved for the next video. So our purple cards, characters, yep, they're actually telling us that they're purple cards here, represent the hero or villain you have chosen to play as during the game. Your character begins in play.
Exclamation mark.
Yep, and then an asterisk. Asterisk, you do not need to play your character at the start of the game. Some characters may have advanced playstyles using additional character cards in their deck. Only character cards that match both name and version with your starting character may be attached and added to your stage. Yeah, so names up here, characters, where the icon for the card type would go is also a version number in Roman numerals. Previously, this was shown by bullet points either side of the character name, but as of the My Hero Academia CCG, it's numbers here instead, just to make it a little bit clearer, I guess.
It's clear in a different way.
Yeah. So your starting hand size. The number of cards here is your starting hand size. This is the number of cards you'll draw up to during the draw step on each of your turns, unless, of course, your character says that you've reduced your starting hand size.
Probably not the best card to use to show this.
Yeah, because this one, the printed hand size, is not going to be the same as his hand size in later turns.
Unless he's playing really, really badly.
Well, I don't know about badly, just wonkily. But anyway.
Oh, really, really well.
Maximum health. The number in the heart icon is your character's maximum health. This is how much health you begin the game with. You can never gain more health than this number. Again, not strictly true. There are some characters that can increase their maximum health, and then they can go up to their new maximum. But I don't know if My Hero Academia will be including any of those. But yeah, you cannot exceed your maximum health. It's just that the maximum health printed on your card is not necessarily the same as your maximum health at any given time. Then yeah, we have the version number over here. This numeral will identify what version of a character the card represents. There will be different versions of many characters. It's important to differentiate which version of a character you are playing. Yep, different versions will probably come from different points in the show. So as we go on, we will probably get a kick-style Deku and stuff, but
That'd be cool.
We'll see that later. Next up, we're talking about the foundation specifically. Nicely, they're showing the hammer icon for the foundation right before they say the word foundation here. That's pretty sweet. And they tell us that they're grey cards. Yeah, I like that it's tying everything together by giving us all the icons and the colours in the text. These expand a character's abilities. Most foundations do not have an effect on the turn they're played. However, on following turns, they provide a player access to more abilities or the chance to play more cards than they otherwise would be able to. Yeah. So while in hand, foundations may be used to block if the block symbol is present. Nice that they bolded while in hand, because I have seen people attempt to block from staging area before, and very few cards allow that. Yeah, there is Omega Sword and Elk Shield.
And Elk Shield, and there's also that one with Dan in it.
Yes, there is also the something Mentor or something.
Yeah, and there's also, I think, Cormorant, I think it is.
Yeah, Cormorant will do it as well. And Cowboy Bebop, Vicious, his little pet. So yeah, there are a select few cards that can block from the staging area, but in almost every situation, unless the card specifically says otherwise, you're blocking from hand.
Yeah.
So, foundations may be used to block if the block symbol is present. Interesting that they're emphasizing that when they have stated that the block symbol is present on every card in the My Hero Academia format.
Maybe if they release an expansion at some point in the future, there might not be, so they want to at least leave it open.
Yeah. They have talked about how they may not be putting blocks on every card in the format going forward, but in the first set, every card will have a block modifier. Just some of them will have some pretty dire ones. I mean, we've seen 4s and 5s already, which are quite rare throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think there's some in Cowboy Bebop specifically for Faye.
So on passing the torch, the block symbol is present, and this is the mid-zone. Yep, so orange with the plus in the middle. This will be explained in further detail in the blocking section. While in the stage, the abilities on a foundation may be used. Foundations also serve as the main way to mitigate luck during a game. This process is called committing. Yep, so to commit your card, you turn it 90 degrees. It's the same as tapping in Magic the Gathering, suspending in Digimon, or dulling in Final Fantasy. I don't remember what it's called in Beyblade. But yeah, there you go. Cards that are not committed are considered ready. Each foundation committed after you make a check gives +1 to that check. So, not strictly true. How this works is, when you fail a check, before it's actually considered failed, you may commit the difference in foundations to make it successful. That does not increase the value of the check. Cards that look at the value of the check that you made will not see that increase.
And this is the thing you were talking about, where it's like comparing the check, the act of checking, and the check on the card. So yeah, that's...
Yeah. There are a lot of things in this rule book that are a little bit simplified, but at the end of the day, this will teach you how to play the rival decks, definitely. It will teach you how to play the MHA CCG. It just might not teach you how to play all of UniVersus.
Yeah. Because there'll be exceptions to basically every rule in every card game.
Yeah. So, Lesson 5, attacks, which, as you can see, crossed sword symbol here, and they are orange cards. Attacks are your primary source of dealing damage to your rival. Yeah, as far as I know, attacks are the only way of dealing damage there is. There are some other ways of inducing health loss, but none of the ones in MHA will deal health loss that can be lethal. So you have to win via attacks, unless, of course, there's some sort of alternate victory condition.
Which I'm hoping for.
So, properties of the attack. First of all, we're looking at zones. So we got high here, mid here, low here. They say the color of the arrow will indicate the zone of the attack. The color does indicate the zone, but the other thing that indicates the zone is where that arrow is pointing.
Yeah,
if the arrow is pointing high, it might be a high. If it's pointing mid, it might be a mid. If it's pointing low, probably a low.
I don't know. We might need to, confer on that one.
Well, I am a qualified judge, so I think I know what I'm talking about. So yeah, a bit weird that they don't state that bit, but there you go. That's how zones are represented. And then the number in the middle of the zone is the speed of the attack. So we got a 2 on this one. The number in this icon, which they don't name, I think it was a hit icon or an explosion or a burst. I think they've used a few different names for it unofficially. Is the base damage of the attack. The damage that the attack will deal if unblocked and unmodified. Most attacks will also have keywords, and some keywords are traits, yeah, like punch here. You'll see those in white. Other keywords will be highlighted with a color, such as throw on reverse throw here, to indicate that they act as shorthand for an ability.
Some of them do have reminder text on them, which will be useful for people starting out.
Yeah, so it says keywords and abilities on here. I'm not sure where abilities is pointing to, because up here we have an ability. Down here we have a reminder of the throw ability.
Maybe they're just indicating the general area of the text box.
Fair enough. You can see white is punch, punch does nothing, punch is just referred to by other cards. Throw is a stand-in for static text, so it's blue. Curious that it's blue though, because you'll also see form abilities are blue. I'm not sure why statics and forms are the same, but they are. You'll also see enhances in orange, like we've got in the text here. Well, red at the top, yellow at the bottom. And then white and green, you will see responses. So they're actually color-coded to what type of ability they are even.
Which is useful.
Yeah, it's really neat. I love that they've done that, because that makes it instantly clear to anyone reading the cards what type of ability things are, when they can use those abilities, and basically just what to look for in the rules to understand what they do. You can instantly tell ally here does nothing. Unique here does something.
In an essence.
Yeah, I mean, what unique does is just say, hey, you can't have more than one of this in your stage. Get rid of one. But
it's like the legend rule in MTG.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know which version of the legend rule we're on now, because there were some really dumb ones back in the day.
Yeah, and now it's only specifically if they have the same card name.
Because there was, at one point, in the early days, there was a version of the Magic the Gathering legend rule that worked for both players, like it works for terrains in UniVersus or world enchantments in Magic, or field spells in Yu-Gi-Oh! It was a genuine thing to just go, well, I'm going to put 5 different legends in my deck just in case my opponent plays them so that I can play them and delete theirs.
Yeah, which I'm not okay with.
No, it was a really stupid rule, and that's why they changed it so both people can have the same legend. Anyway, now we have actions, which are a lightning bolt symbol, and blue cards. They're special events or abilities that can seriously impact the game. Abilities on these cards are played from your hand. You can play them any time that a similar ability can be played. Sort of. I mean, if they're a response, you can play them any time that response could be played, not necessarily any time another response could be played, because responses have specific timing, but otherwise pretty much yes. So here we have the example. Enhance abilities on action cards can only be played during the enhance step. Yep. Actions stay in your card pool after they're played or are discarded if the check to play them fails. Yeah.
Or if they are removed as part of the cost, which a lot of them are.
So in My Hero Academia so far, we've not seen any that remove or discard as part of the cost. They all do it as part of the effect. But yeah, a lot of them will tell you not to leave them there. But if they don't tell you not to leave them there, then they stay there. And actions are the only card type where you just play the card by playing the ability.
Yep.
Assets, cog symbol on the other hand, are tools, allies, or even special locations used to help get a leg up in battle. Yep. So assets are similar to foundations, but unlike foundations, you can't commit them in order to pass checks. So instead, they have good abilities to make up for them. You'll see this has the unique keyword on it. Almost every asset in the game has the unique keyword, but there will be one coming up in a future video that does not.
Dun, dun, dun.
So yeah, look forward to that, because most of them are named weapons, named people, named places. So next section we have the turn sequence. Your turn is divided into 3 phases: the start phase, the combat phase, and the end phase, in that order. The first player skips the start phase on their first turn, but what the start phase contains is 3 steps: the ready step, the review step, and the draw step. Yeah, so I would like to point out this was previously known as the ready phase, and people would get very confused between ready phase and ready step. And even people who've been playing the game for ages wouldn't be able to tell the difference when reading card rules. I really do like that they've changed it so that they've got a different word for each of the steps and for the phase.
Yeah.
So that you're now not mixing them up.
Good distinction to make.
Yeah, so during your ready step, you do exactly what you'd think you do. You ready all the cards in your stage. Also all the cards anywhere else if they're only committed elsewhere, but I don't think we do that anymore.
There's probably some weird interaction somewhere that does it.
There's one character that is either in retro or in standard but just not played because the rules don't allow for them. But their whole ability is committing foundations in their card pool. And just, the rules don't allow for that. Don't do that. That's not how the game works.
What attack was it that you played that you wanted to see if you could commit it in your card pool?
Yeah, there's a card called Absinthian Arrow that I played on stream the other day. that has the ability to remove the top 2 cards of the opponent's discard pile from the game and steal one of their enhances, but you also steal the cost of the enhance. So the only enhance I could take was one which said commit to pay the cost.
We had to see if it was possible to commit an attack in your card pool.
So yeah, I went and found a slightly more senior judge who just said, no, you can't do that. Do not do this.
Cease.
Which is odd, because you'd think the rules would allow for such a thing, but apparently no.
I mean, because when stuff's committed, it means they can't play the abilities, and would
Well, then I couldn't play the abilities on my attack.
Yeah, but would that affect the ability for the attack to come out?
No, that's not an ability. That's just part of what the attack does. Anyway, let's move on from this.
Yeah, this is getting...
Because next we have the review step. During your review step, you may discard 1 card, and that's considered reviewing. You don't have to, but if you want a card out your hand, that means you'll be drawing an extra card when you reach the draw step. Because during the draw step, you draw up to your character's current hand size. Not necessarily the same as their starting hand size, as we addressed earlier, their hand size can change throughout the course of the game. It usually won't, but it can. So that was the start phase, now we have the combat phase.
The punch phase.
So you corrected me in a segment that I'm going to be taking out, and now you're correcting me to something that's actually wrong. Because it's not the phase where you can only play punches. A lot of characters will play kicks, throws, furies, ranges, techs even, weapons. There are lots of different types of attack you can have.
But really, they're all just different flavor of punch.
No! Also, do not lick Deku's fists.
Okay, I don't know where
like
that
it.
came from, but I don't think I want to.
Well, I mean, how else do you test the flavor of a punch? Moving on.
Okay.
So the combat phase is basically your main phase in any other game. But because this is a fighting game, it's combat. And let's see, you may do any of the following any number of times. Play an attack, foundation, asset, or character card. Yep, so play a card from your hand as a form. You can't play actions like this unless they have a form ability. And then, yeah, if you ever fail to play a card as a form, it will be discarded from your card pool the way any failed card would be, and then your turn will end. If you're playing the card in a different way, however, that will not end your turn.
Such as playing an action as an enhance.
Yes. Then we have playing form abilities on cards in your stage or action cards in your hand. Yep, so that's a separate type of form you can take. If the form involves playing a card and you fail it, that will end your turn. If the form does not involve playing a card, even if the form doesn't go through for some reason, that will not end it. So let's say you have a form 5+ ability and you have to make a check for that ability and you only check a 3. You can just let that fail and go on to your next form if you want. That won't end your turn. And yeah, the third action you can do is you can pass and just say, nope, not doing anything anymore. Combat phase ends. Now, as I understand it, there are some restrictions on that. If you pass too much without playing cards, you can be penalized for it, but I don't know if these rules cover that, and I don't know if how that works is changing.
That's something else we'll have to see about. Sure.
So, the end phase next. In this phase, the card pools are cleared to end the turn. Yep, to clear your card pool, move cards from your card pool to other zones using the following rules. The player whose turn it is clears their card pool first. Clear your card pool going from right to left. So your rightmost card leaves first, then the next one until you get to the leftmost. And when clearing cards from your card pool, do we have this? Yeah, any foundations or assets played during your turn get built to your stage in presumably whatever face up or face down they're in. And then any characters played in your turn go to your stage and attach to your starting character, but they can only attach to your character if they are same character name and version number. So if they're not, they will fail to attach, and any unattached characters immediately get discarded.
Yeah.
Interesting that it doesn't state that bit here. I guess it's just assuming that we're not going to play characters.
Someone will
work
try
that way.
it.
And then we have any of your attacks that dealt damage, you may add them to your momentum, but you don't have to. If you add them to your momentum, they will go face down. Apparently, we're going to see more about momentum on page 21. Currently, they were only on 11. And then all other cards are discarded. So your actions, basically, or any attacks that didn't deal damage. Then your rival does the same thing from their card pool. The difference being that because it's not their turn, their foundations and everything don't go. Yeah, actually, this just says they'll all go to the discard pile. That's interesting. Because what this means is that if your opponent's played a reversal, although I guess we haven't seen any reversals in MHA yet, so maybe there aren't any, then their reversal won't go to their momentum.
If they do add reversals, I hope they are to that, because that would be a huge...
Yeah. That'd be a huge
to
nerf to reversals. The other weird, interesting thing here, though, is that foundations played in your turn, right? Not foundations played as forms in your turn.
And
So if somebody
another thing
reversals you and you block them with a foundation, theoretically you still build that foundation at the end of the turn.
which could lead to some real shenanigans.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure these are all just weird wordings that don't account for the way the game actually works in the more complex environment of Standard. Not that these are actual rule changes. But I don't know for certain.
Because that would lead to some, oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh.
After the end phase, your rival's turn begins. Note, one thing not stated here is that you have to discard down to your hand size end of turn. Because you don't. If you have drawn enough cards to have more than your hand size, you just keep them. And that's going to be a problem come the next turn, because you can't draw any new cards. But you've still got more than your hand size, so as long as you've got decent cards in your hand, you just live with that.
Especially if you're All Might.
Yes, especially if you're All Might.
Yeah. At one time I played a really bad deck and had like 15 cards in hand that I couldn't play.
Yeah. Now, if only you'd been Deku and could just discard your hand for free. Right, so playing cards. Here we go. You'll have to master the art of progressive difficulty in order to play as many cards as you can. Let's go through an example sequence to help hone your skills. Okay, now if that doesn't sound like a hero training montage overdub, I don't know what does. So when playing a card, add it to the leftmost empty spot in your card pool. You can now determine the total difficulty. Start with the printed difficulty top left of the card, then add your progressive difficulty to determine the total difficulty. So to find the progressive difficulty, you just count each card in the card pool before the card you're trying to play. So to the left of it. And yeah, that number is the progressive difficulty. So you add the progressive difficulty to the base difficulty. You get the actual difficulty of the check that you got to make to pass this card, and then you make said check, the next page, and there you go. And then they're just reminding you at the bottom here, you go from left to right, and new cards are always placed to the right of every other card.
The card pool isn't exactly 6 cards. It doesn't have a hard limit on it. So
no, there is a hard limit on how many slots they can fit on a card mat, but there is no limit on how big your card pool can be. I have seen it go to 15 plus.
Okay, was that someone just spamming multiples?
That was Zolt, yes.
Thought so.
Multiples, I also think, aren't an MHA.
Which is disappointing.
There is one other thing here, which is when playing a card, it acts as though it's in the card pool, but until you've succeeded the card, it hasn't actually gone there. It's in the weird transitionary zone. The reason that matters is there are some cards which say every card gets +1 difficulty while this is in the card pool. And because they're not in the card pool, they're not increasing their own difficulty.
It could lead to shenanigans.
Yeah, there's also the inverse of reducing difficulty, which if they went in would mean that the cards were essentially just less difficult, and that would be kind of unfair.
And also would make the printed difficulty pointless.
Yes, just be aware of that, basically. Those abilities aren't active until the card has actually succeeded.
Yeah.
Right, here we go, how to make a check. Playing Passing the Torch, there is nothing before Passing the Torch. Its total difficulty is 2, because you've got 0 progressive from nothing before it. You got the printed difficulty of 2, total of 2. So you flip over your top card, you put it in the top of your discard pile, you see this number down here is 3, and that is that. You've successfully played the card. Oh, and here we have a little message about cycling. When your deck runs out of cards, so when you've checked your last one, presumably that's why it'll be here, you shuffle your discard pile up to create a new deck, and then you remove the top 10 cards of your deck from the game. If you ever run out of cards after the process, you've exhausted yourself and lost the game.
Don't do that.
Yeah, just don't run out of cards, basically.
Just don't lose.
Yeah, it's that simple. Right, here's an example playing card later in your turn. So here we have 3 cards, and then we're playing in a Bonds of Friendship. Bonds of Friendship has a difficulty of 1 by default, but it's got 3 cards before it. So 3 plus 1 is 4. So you need to check a 4 to pass it. Unfortunately, you check a 3 here.
No.
And so you have to commit something. So you can commit any number of foundations to make it succeed, except you can't go in excess of what you need. So you can only actually commit 1 in this instance. And you can also commit your character as a cost anytime it's asked to commit a foundation. So in this instance, you can commit your character as well. Note, if an ability says commit a foundation, you can't commit your character. It's only if a cost says it, or if you need to pass a check. So if your opponent uses the stun ability and says commit 3 foundations and you only have 2, your character still stays ready.
I mean, it would kind of make sense flavor-wise, but would also be really unfair.
It would be incredibly mean if they made you commit your character like that, yes.
Yeah.
That's why that doesn't happen. Just
Yeah.
Be aware of that. Know that you can keep your character ready. It helps a lot. But also know that you can commit your character to pass checks, because that helps a ton too. If you fail to play the card completely, so if you can't pass it or you choose not to commit things to pass it, it goes to the discard pile, and because you're playing it as a form, your turn ends. And yeah, here we have at the bottom a reminder, when trying to play a card, you must either commit enough cards to pass the check, or no cards. Nothing in between, and you can't exceed the amount either.
I mean, I don't know, like, there are very few occasions where you'd want to go over, but there are a few.
There are some cards that really want to be committed.
Yeah, but those aren't in MHA, those have been standard.
Also true. Right, now we have the enhanced step. So when you play an attack, you enter the attack sequence. Well, you can respond to the attack, and then you go into the sequence. And the sequence is 3 steps. It's the enhanced step, the block step, the damage step. Once an attack is successfully played and all responses are done, you'll enter the enhanced step, starting with the player who played the attack. Both players then take it in turns playing enhance abilities. So you have a choice. You can either play an enhance or pass, and to pass specifically, you're passing the enhance. You're just saying, no, I don't want to play an enhance right now, and then you give it to the opponent, and the opponent decides. When you both choose to pass consecutively, then the enhanced step ends. But if you don't enhance, your opponent enhances. You don't enhance, your opponent enhances. You do enhance, your opponent doesn't enhance. You still get another option to enhance, because yes, both of you have passed, but not consecutively. And that's important to be aware of. But yeah, you can use enhance abilities on the attack. You can use enhance abilities on cards in your stage, so your foundations, your assets, your character. And then there are some cards as well that will enhance from momentum or from even the top of the discard pile, but I don't think there's any of those in MHA.
You can also enhance with actions.
Oh, yes, you can also enhance with action cards from your hand. And yet back and forth until both players have passed consecutively. Once the enhance step ends, the block step begins. But we're not going to talk about that right now. Apparently we're going to talk about enhance abilities instead.
Weird ordering, but okay.
So each enhance ability can only be used during the enhance sequence and only once per attack. So yeah, once per attack means unless the card says otherwise, you can use that enhance on every single attack.
Assuming the card stays readied.
Yeah. If the card's committed, you can't use anything on it. But otherwise, you can use it as many times as you like. Enhance abilities are separated into 2 parts, the cost and the effect. Everything before the colon is the cost. So some cards have weird costs. I mean, I've seen cards that say draw 2 cards as a cost.
I can't cancel a cost.
No. Although you can cancel a card draw, I think.
You can respond to the cost of drawing cards.
I'm not sure. I think there might be something that does it, but I can't 100% guarantee that. It's weird anyway.
Weird.
Once the cost has been paid, the effect will occur in the order it's written on the card. And you will fulfill as much of the effect as you can. You will not necessarily fulfill all of it.
Like with Deku, it says discard your hand if you don't have any cards in hand.
No, discard your hand is the cost. You have to discard your hand, but your hand can be empty. You can just discard an empty hand. So that's a separate thing of it doesn't state how much has to be in your hand, so you can still pay the cost. But no, stuff like Voice of Reason, which is enhance, colon, discard a card, draw a card. Because the discard a card is after the colon, not before it, like we'll see on all of Bakugo's stuff here, you don't have to do that as the cost, so if you have no cards, you just ignore that and get on with the drawing. Whereas these ones, because the discard is before, you actually do have to do the discard. Otherwise, you can't use the ability.
Yeah.
But yeah, they would like to explain some costs to us, so here we go. Commit is commit the card, yep. Turn it 90 degrees. Cool. Flip is flip the card over, turn it face down. It no longer has any abilities, but is still a foundation, they say here.
That's it to pass checks.
So if it's in your stage, it's a foundation. If it's in your momentum, it's not a foundation. And there are some cards that specifically have flip costs in your momentum. So I feel like this could have been clearer. Then we have destroy, which is place a card from your stage into your discard pile. As far as I know, there are no instances of destroy that work differently to that. But yeah. Get rid of a foundation or an asset is what destroy does. Destroy one foundation is like destroy, but it doesn't mean destroy this, it means destroy any one foundation you feel like.
Can be itself, but a lot of the time won't be.
Yeah. Well, especially on Bakugo here, you can't destroy your character.
I mean, I'm disappointed that it's not an actual option. That'd be a pretty fun way to concede.
Yes, that would be a pretty fun way to concede.
Literally just self-destruct.
The problem there is if you could destroy your character, your opponent could destroy your character.
Which would be a pretty funny way to win.
Yes, but I doubt there are very many ways they could make that fair.
Yeah.
Then we have discard 1 momentum, which means take a card from your momentum and put it into your discard pile. Note, it doesn't have to be your top momentum or your bottom momentum. It can be any momentum you want. So if you remember the order of cards that went into your momentum, you can choose which card specifically you want to discard.
You can't look at your face down momentum.
Unless a card says otherwise, yes.
Yeah.
The character Hiei from Yu Yu Hakusho will do that, and also one of Ochako or Uraraka, whichever one you want to call her. You can call her Uravity if you prefer.
Yeah.
Has
Because
the ability
wealthy
to look.
aspirations.
Yeah, but generally speaking, you cannot look at your momentum.
Yeah.
Then we have discard 2 cards here. Interesting that it specifies 2, but I guess it's because it's what's on Bakugo's cards. Is discard 2 cards from your hand. Unless otherwise stated, discard means discard from hand. And then we have in the small print down here, abilities on committed cards cannot be played unless the ability states playable while committed. So yeah, there we go. That's an explanation of enhances and their costs. Now we're going on to responses. So responses in green and white are abilities that can only be played when a specific condition is met. Yep, so anything that happens in this game will open what's known as a response window. Players will have chance to respond to it, and then possibly those responses will make response windows, and it will get this crazy mess if you actually look at it from a technical standpoint. But as long as you're not trying to program a game, it's fine. Just that's one of the many reasons why there will never be a digital version of UniVersus.
Sad.
Basically, anything that happens in the game is respondable to, but not everything will have a response available at the time. What responses do we have on here? We have Bakugo's response, which is to his card resolving when it's been blocked. We have Rigorous Training's response to it entering the staging area, the stage. We have Burst Speeds' one to going into the discard pile, and I believe this one's the same but with a different effect.
And also Burst Speeds Bakugo specifically.
Yes, Burst Speed is a Bakugo response, which means it can only be played by Bakugo. But I mentioned up top how I would really like to be able to play Bakugo's mum, because the thing is, her name is Mitsuki Bakugo. which means, technically, she can play Bakugo responses, because she is also Bakugo.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I just love the idea of having 2 characters that can play this same character-only response.
Okay, that actually could be something really interesting.
But the other thing to note is that some of these responses can be used more than once. Specifically, Bakugo's one here can be used on every single time one of his blocked attacks resolves.
Like enhances, unless they specify it, responses can be played any amount of times in an enhanced step.
That's not how enhances work. Enhances can be played once per enhanced step.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
responses can be played once per response window. However, some responses will have multiple response windows that they can respond to happen in a same enhanced step.
And that's what I meant. Maybe I just didn't word it right.
So I believe there's a card in My Hero Academia for Ida, which is whenever your attack gets plus speed, you can give it plus a damage or something like that.
That's Jagan Farm.
No, yeah, what I'm thinking of, sorry, is an attack which is whenever your opponent commits a foundation during that attack's enhanced step, you can respond, give it plus a speed.
Yeah, it's reciprocal burst.
And yeah, you can respond sort of upwards of 4 or 5 times in enhanced step in the right conditions, so... Yeah, responses aren't limited to once per enhanced step the same way that enhances are, but they are limited to once per response window. Now, onto the block step. Right, we finally got here. Your rival is attacked and the enhanced step is complete. Now the block step begins, where you can try to block an attack and try to reduce the damage you will take. Blocks have 3 possible zones, just like attacks: high, mid, and low. High and mid zones are adjacent. Low and mid zones are adjacent. Mid zone is adjacent to both high and low zones. High and low zones are not adjacent zones. So to block an attack, you must either match the zone or be adjacent to the zone. You cannot block a high with a low or a low with a high. You may only try to block once per attack, and you're not required to block even if you can. Successful blocks stay in your card pool until the end phase, whereas a failed block is added to your discard pile. You failing a block will not end your opponent's turn.
That would be
I don't know why it would, but just a thing to be aware of. And yeah, that's how you block. Continuing the block step, though, to block, you will need to determine the block difficulty. The block difficulty is made up of 3 things rather than the 2 that normal difficulty would be made up of. Because you'll notice this block, say, is a 2+, which means it's 2 plus the speed of the thing that it's blocking, and then you have progressive as well. So in this case, progressive is 0, but 3 plus 2 makes 5. But yeah, all 3 of those numbers factor in this time.
Yep.
And then you make a check against the combined difficulty of all of them. If you successfully pass the check, you will reduce the amount of damage you take depending on the zone of the attack and the zone of your block. Yep. Once you're done with blocking, you go to the damage step. When you block an attack, if your block zone completely matches the zone of the attack, you will take no damage. If you choose not to block or fail to block an attack, you will lose health equal to the damage of the attack. If you block it with an adjacent block zone, however, you will do what we like to refer to as partially blocking and take half damage rounded up. Now, there are also some card texts that override this. The most notable one being the text of the keyword throw, which says even if you fully block it, you will take half damage rounded up, basically as though you partially blocked it, as though you blocked with an adjacent zone rather than the correct zone.
Makes them good as finishers.
Yeah, throws are excellent finishers for that very reason. But also a lot of cards don't work with throws because, well, that very reason.
They would be too, yeah.
Right. Block step continued again, okay. So, actual example we have here, Signature Right Swing is a 3-speed high zone attack with 4 damage. So we have 3 different cards in hand, one's a low, 2 are mids. So we have Velocity Punch, Passing the Torch, and Rigorous Training, yep. Passing the Torch and Rigorous Training are mids, so we're going to block with Rigorous Training to take half damage. Start by adding Rigorous Training to the leftmost empty slot in your card pool, then determine the total block difficulty. Right, so in this case we have 0 progressive, but we do have a 3-speed attack, plus 2 block modifier. This is what we were seeing up here, isn't it? Yeah, this is the same example. Don't do this to us, come on. Presumably on the actual booklet, these will be the left and right hand pages, so it'll make a little more sense. But yeah, apparently in this situation, we've checked note-taking, which has a check of 5. Since it was equal to the difficulty, the block was successful, everything's fine, excellent. And you still take half damage, rounded up, you take 2.
Momentum.
Ah, yes, momentum. So some of your card abilities will require momentum as a cost for their effects. They're powerful enough to swing many games in your favor, yep. The one on Aspiring Punch here being, in my opinion, the biggest one, but Blast Rush Turbos is also pretty large as well. They picked the right cards to show these abilities off, definitely.
There's also capabilities.
Yeah, I would say capabilities is a bit less powerful than these two, but
yeah, but still
it's also a
really
foundation, so it's repeatable.
Yeah.
So some effects will gain you momentum, but the main way to gain momentum is by dealing damage with your attacks. Yep. During the end phase of each turn, each player may add any of their attacks that dealt damage to their momentum. Right,
Okay,
so that
so
contradicts what was said earlier.
Yeah.
Because earlier it was said during your turn, your attacks would go to your momentum. Here it said any of your attacks will go to your momentum if they dealt damage. So, slight contradiction there, but I guess this overrules it because this is how the rules worked previously.
It'll be a quick thing to clear up for new players.
Yeah, and yeah, here's examples of cards. Cool. And then we get to the reference sheet. What we got on here? Well, you probably can't see that properly because it won't scroll past a certain point. Isn't that great?
That's unfortunate.
But I guess you can see that on the document that I'll be linking in the description. Hopefully, going through this has helped clear up how the game works for all of you. And if it hasn't, again, you can go through it yourself in the description. You can find this PDF. Give it a look. I think that's all for today, but we'll be covering what's actually in these rival decks in the next video. And if you want to see them in action, come check us out on Tuesdays, 8 PM BST. We play the My Hero Academia card game.
We build jank.
Yep, link in the description for that as well. See you then, everyone.
Adios.